Coming up on This Week in Space, there's a launch date for SpaceX Flight 9 Starship. A general is now in charge of Trump's Golden Dome. Blue Origin's launching a rocket on a rocket, and we're going to get to the bottom of what Lunar Landing Day could be as a national holiday, and it's all thanks to one man. So tune in.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
This is This Week in Space, episode number 162, recorded on May 23rd, 2025, Lunar Landing Day. Hello and welcome to another episode of This Week in Space, the National Lunar Landing Day edition. I'm Rod Pyle, editor-in-chief of Badaster Magazine, and I'm joined by my fellow space lunatic, Tarek Malik, editor-in-chief at the one, the only, the amazing Space.com. Hello, partner.
Hey, I see what you did there with the moon, and now we're all lunatics. Ha 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 ha. See, how funny. It's a joke.
I was born so clever, and yeah, my mom told me I had the cleverness of an 8-year-old in my 50s. In a few minutes, however, speaking of clever, we'll be joined by Dr. Robert Slater, MD, who is the prime force behind the Lunar Landing Day initiative. And this is a cool one. This is something that's inspirational. It's a feel-good thing. It's good for everybody. It's good for education. It's good for STEM. It's good for the country. It makes us stop and remember what we've accomplished and probably scratch our heads and wonder why it's taking us so long to accomplish it a second time. We did it the first time in 9 years, and we've been working on it for longer than that now, but that's another story. So before we start, please don't forget to do us a solid to make sure to like and subscribe and the other podcast things to tell the world how wonderful we are. Speaking of which,
we are wonderful.
Tarek, we are wonderful. I'd never actually stopped to look at This Week in Space reviews before.
Yeah? No?
Thought I'd look it up. And on LinkedIn, we got a #1 space podcast.
All right.
And most other surveys I saw, we were down between 8 and 12, but we got a #1.
No.
We're happy about that. Yeah, sounds like
the Beatles. I can retire. I'm going to retire early. #1 podcast, everybody. Everybody heard it here.
Yeah, on that big fat pension you're going to get. And now, a space joke from Jamie Marsh. This has been in the hopper for quite a while. Hey, Tarek.
Yes, Rod.
A friend said she wanted to become a star. I told her to be serious.
Ha ha ha. I love it. I love it.
Yes, a little chuckle. Good. I've heard that some people want to seriously send us into deep space for the joke time of this show. Wah wah, but you can help. Send us your best, worst, or most different space joke at twit@twit.tv. Now, it's time for
Headline news.
Headline news. I got that down.
This is kind of like the Craig Newmart thing on Leo's show.
I don't know.
Except I'm not as tired of this one yet. So I can't believe you put this first, but Golden Dome, go for it, brother.
I didn't put this first. You put it first.
I didn't put this in.
Oh,
yes,
no.
I did. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you did.
Okay.
So, but no, yeah. Actually, you know what? Can we skip one and go to the next one? Let's go to line. I want to skip because it just happened today. Let's go to line 23.
You're going to get us in trouble with the administration, but go ahead.
No, let's go to 23 really quick because hours before we started recording today's podcast, SpaceX made it official, and they have picked the launch date for the next Starship mission, Starship Flight 9. The launch is set for no earlier than Tuesday, so that's May 27th? Yes, Tuesday, May 27th, and it's going to be at I guess about it's going to be at night, 7:30 p.m. Eastern time, 6:30 p.m. Central time. And this is interesting in two different ways. And there's another story on line 24 too, if you want to grab that one there too, John. Because so this will be SpaceX's third Starship launch of the year, and they're hoping it's going to be their first successful launch of the year. Because as you might remember, in January and then again in February or March, the Flight 6 or Flight 7 and Flight 8 failed to deliver the Starship to their vehicle because the upper stage had some kind of wicked shimmy or something like that, and they both broke apart and blew up, and they weren't able to accomplish the mission. So they're hoping that this third time of a new and improved version of the flight would actually work. And so the FAA a day prior, so earlier this week, gave them the approval for this Flight 9 with a bunch of caveats. Number one of which was that the SpaceX completed their assessment of what failed on Flight 8. They did that, and they posted all of the results of that today as well, which I still haven't sunk my teeth into. But if you want, you can head to SpaceX.com/launches and see it there under the Flight 8 update. And then the other approach is that the FAA kind of wanted them to change their trajectory. So you may see a little bit of a different path on this flight than in the past because they want to make sure that the airplanes are staying pretty far away from it so they don't get grounded if there's an anomaly. And then also they want to make sure that there isn't any kind of debris overflight or fall, as we've seen in the last two flights over Turks and Caicos, which was at the request of the UK government, over the Bahamas, etc., which we've talked about in the past too, because it's the world's largest rocket. You don't want it falling on your country. And so they've made some tweaks in that regard for this flight. And we'll see if they finally, make a successful trip with this Flight 9, this new, larger and modified version of Starship, their second version of it to date, and then if they can take the next steps, which there are many for the other test flights, etc.
Is this intended to be an orbital flight?
As I've read it, like the goal is to recreate the earlier trajectories to get to the Indian Ocean and do that soft landing in the ocean. Yeah. And this is going to be, however, the first full reflight of the booster, of the super heavy booster. I think they've only replaced a few engines of the 33.
And the rest
hardly any. And they've test fired it.
That brings them into the bring the rocket down and hose it off and clean the ashtrays mode.
Very close, yeah.
Okay, so for the next one, we have China in a sky near you. Now, this story calls for enforcement by the space thugs. Here's my Martin Lawler provided space thugs mug. We're going to go out there and tell those people, stop flying over 6 American states and dumping fuel up in the air because it scares people. And I have to say, it's an experimental fuel dump. At least that's how I read it. This reminds me a little bit of plans in the late 1950s that both Russia and the U.S. had, Soviet Union in those days, to nuke the moon because it was a sign of technological superiority and was supposed to scare the other guys. Hey, we'll do this big nuclear explosion on the moon. It'll send up a big plume and a flash, and everybody will go, they're powerful people. This is a smaller thing, but one has to wonder, was it necessary? Was it accidental? Was it deliberate? Because it was quite a show, apparently.
Yeah, I don't know. I know we've got this story from Live Science, but Space.com also had it, and it's unmistakable. You see this brilliant white streak in the night sky, and it's going to spark some questions. And so this actually came from I'm sure I'm going to pronounce this right. Juque. I know I'm pronouncing it right. 2E rocket that a Chinese commercial company called Landscape launched. It's a methane fueled rocket, and it launched from the Jiuquan satellite launch center. It carried 6 satellites into orbit, including a radar spacecraft and a space science payload. And its upper stage reached about an altitude of 155 miles when it carried out this experimental fuel dump, which spacecraft watchers like Jonathan McDowell and others have chronicled, and that fuel then froze into this brilliant ribbon of crystals that then reflected all of the light back at the Earth. So it was a bit of a surprise for everyone to see, and that's what created that. Now, as you say, they must have expected it to be visible from somewhere. You don't dump fuel that high and then expect it to go unnoticed, or perhaps they thought it might get what's that called, where it goes straight from liquid to gas. Subliming. Yeah, maybe they thought it would sublime a lot faster. But they showed everyone that they have methane fuel to spare. Apparently, they can do this dump, and now we know what this is going to look like.
and there was nothing sublime about that. So I have to say, I went out during COVID. If you extend the COVID years, there were 2 comets that were supposed to be visible and fairly interesting. One was green, and I don't remember the name of either of them. But I drove out.
I saw the green comet. That was
good for you. Los Angeles. I drove hours. At about the time you get away from the LA light bloom, you're either driving into the one from Phoenix or Las Vegas or San Luis Obispo. So there's really nowhere to get full dark around here unless I take the boat out into the mid-Pacific. But I did go out where it's pretty dark, and I saw one of them which looked like a tiny greenish, barely visible Q-tip held at arm's length. It was really nothing. Where was this when I was out looking for that comet? Because this looks very, very cool. Okay, we are going to, surprise, go to a break, and we'll be right back with the rest of our headlines. Don't go anywhere. So we got rocket on a rocket.
Well, do you want to do that, or do you want to do Golden Dome now? We skipped over Golden Dome, but we should go back to it.
Oh, if you must.
Well, let's go back.
So they selected a Space Force general to lead the ambitious and likely grossly underestimated in terms of budgetary terms and likely delay-prone Golden Dome program. It's an ambitious idea. For those of us old enough, it kind of strikes back of a strategic defense initiative, otherwise known as Star Wars. But of course, we're much advanced since those times. Israel's done something like this. Maybe we can do it. But this one's a little more ambitious than Israel's because it is supposed to include catching things coming out of orbital trajectories, right?
Yeah. This is a pet project that the Trump administration announced. I think during his administration, his what is that State of the Union thing, or his when he took office, he said we're gonna create a Golden Dome around the country. It's a missile defense shield, but very much like you said, Israel's Iron Dome, and it's going to cost $175 billion. But we didn't hear. Yeah, I know we didn't hear too much about how it was going to work until an event, the Oval Office this week, where Trump and Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth unveiled the overall plans, which basically means that they're going to spend this $175 billion is what they're setting aside for it. It's going to take 3 years to develop, even though, like as you said earlier, Rod, it might take a lot longer. And he named Space Force General Michael Goutzlian, the Vice Chief of Space Operations, to be the one to go ahead and oversee it. And he said, it is time that we change the equation and start doubling down on the protection of the homeland, is what Goutzlian said during the actual press conference itself. But they've got their work cut out for them, because this is something that dates back to the 80s with Ronald Reagan's Star Wars missile defense plan. In fact, Trump name dropped Reagan during his kind of opening comments about why he wanted to do this, make the country safer, etc. But I don't think he said Star Wars by name. And of course, we didn't get orbital lasers or any of that kind of thing from Star Wars, or did we? Rod, do you know anything?
Well,
anyway,
I mean, all kidding aside, though, they did do a lot of research on high energy chemical lasers and stuff, which was pretty impressive. I guess the question that occurs to me here is, has anybody said the words fixed price contract or cost plus contracts? Because that is going to be, and because I guess this will probably be a somewhat dark budget, it could get really expensive really fast if they do cost plus, which Air Force loves to do for Space Force.
There's $25 billion earmarked to help start the funding for this program.
Oh, you mean more than NASA's whole budget this year?
Yeah, right. pretty much. Yeah, in the one big beautiful bill legislation that the House I guess signed off on to go forward. So that's the initial big conglomerate bill that has a lot of Trump's agenda stuff in it. And then of course they're going to need to develop a bunch of space-based interceptors, a bunch of monitoring satellites, etc. That all could be part of this. The Congressional Budget Office has outlined in a report that the lower estimates are on the $161 billion cost front, but it could even go all the way up to $542 billion, or that's more than $500 billion if things don't go as planned. And as you just alluded to, it could cost a lot more than that, depending on what type of contracts they set, what the success rate is for that stuff, and what defines success as well.
Now, just so it's said, I'm not trying to beat up on this particular administration for this idea because, as you point out, it's been tried before. And, there's some wisdom probably to having this kind of defense system. I think what sort of bugs me is how much is going to be thrown at this when we're struggling to get this return to the moon. Now, is returning to the moon as important as defending the country? Probably not. Mm-hmm. But we've been diddling around with this since 2004 in one form or another, with a break for asteroid redirect, which didn't happen either. And, we've got this surviving...
Don't get me started on ARM.
This surviving hardware, which works. We've got a moon rocket that costs a bunch of money, but it works. We've got a capsule, the Orion, which costs a bunch of money, but it works. We have a launch system that's still, I think, trudging towards completion. The big overblown, what am I thinking of? There's a specific name for it. The contract that's gone way out of control for the gantries launch platform.
Oh, the mobile launch
platform.
Yeah.
Give me a break. But, we're really close. So can you guys just, maybe give NASA a little bit of extra money now, get them over the finish line. If you hadn't said we're going to beat China back to the moon, I wouldn't really care so much. But you said it, and now it's going to be embarrassing if you don't. And just saying, yeah, we'll just go to Mars instead doesn't make that any easier to do. And we're going to have somebody on the show, I hope, in a few weeks that's going to talk about the difficulties of extended spaceflight. Okay, stepping off the soapbox, I'm going to skip down to a story that I found very interesting that's only vaguely space related, that I like to call AI Doom. So OpenAI has announced a new AI processing center to be built in Abu Dhabi that would be larger than the country of Monaco. Now, admittedly, Monaco's about as large as my neighborhood, but still, we're talking a processing center that's a square mile that would suck up 5 gigawatts of power, or roughly equivalent to that generated, according to the press, by 5 nuclear plants. I'm presuming that's an average measure. That's still a lot of power. And if you're not building nuclear plants to power it, that's a lot of fossil fuels burning so that people can, query Claude or OpenAI and get the result. Yes, you ought to eat rocks in your salad to get minerals. And, it's like there's an awful lot of stuff happening in AI that probably doesn't need to be there burning up resources.
I asked Gemini, the AI on my phone, last night, if it was actually on the phone or in a bunch of servers somewhere. And it said it was in a bunch of servers somewhere. And I asked it very plainly, does this mean that this conversation is burning down the planet? And it said, it's good you're thinking about that, because yes, it takes a lot of power. So something to think about for sure. Although it is the desert.
Second question. And I went on to Claude yesterday, and it rejected my request, not because it didn't like it, but it said we don't have the resources to handle this now, because somebody was probably asking for fart jokes or something. Let's pick one more. Your pick of the Oscars here. We're going to go to our new segment.
Oh, all right. Well, let's do Rocket on a Rocket.
Okay, Rocket on a Rocket.
Yeah.
This is kind of weird.
Did you want to do it, or did you want me to do it?
No, I want you to do it.
All right. So this week we also got the announcement for Blue Origin's next private space flight, the NS-32 mission. No, Katy Perry is not going back to space. However, they are launching a rocket on a rocket, and it's not the rocket that you think. It's actually investor Mark Rocket, who is one of 6 different people who are going to be launching on the New Shepard suborbital mission. They don't really have a date that I'm aware of yet, so they are waiting to set that one out. But if that name sounds familiar, Mark Rocket is an entrepreneur from New Zealand who is the CEO of a company called Kia. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. Aerospace, president of Aerospace New Zealand, and he was a seed investor in Rocket Lab, and we all know how well that turned out, because they are just launching rockets like there's no tomorrow. And I think he might have been a director on their board for a while, until 2011, if memory serves. But he will be aboard this crew that will include a few other people: Jamie Alleman, Gretchen Green, Paul. I think it's Ayers is how you, or Jairus, pardon me. And I met Medina, Jorge probably, and Jesse Williams. And those other folks, Alaman is a Panamanian businessman, an attorney who has been an ambassador to the United States, so probably just going as part of a joyride. Green is a radiologist, life coach, explorer, and space camp alumni, like me, who bicycled. Who bicycled across the U.S. At age when she was 16 to help fight hunger. And Jairus is an entrepreneur and real estate developer who has been passionate. So a lot of kind of space tourists there. And I believe that Medina Jorge is an award-winning, she's a middle school and high school STEM teacher who has led more than 60 space and zero-G flights. So she's been on some experiments, like those zero gravity flights that do the simulated. Now she'll experience the full on microgravity again, weightlessness for like 4 minutes or so unbroken, instead of the 30-second snippets that she got on those education flights. So, and her seat was sponsored by the Farmacias Similarius, a Mexican company committed to social impact and accessible healthcare. So, and then finally, Williams is a Canadian entrepreneur and adventurer. So, a bunch of he's visited the 7 highest peaks, including Mount Everest. A bunch of adventurers paying for their joyride to space. A couple of STEM and deep space investors on board too. It's going to be an interesting crew, but not as say PR open, as the Katy Perry flight might have been. So.
This is interesting. While you were finishing your story, I was seeing John doing calisthenics to try and stay awake. Over on the board. All right. Well, then don't pick rocket on a rocket. You pick that one too. All right. I thought it was cute. But cuter still is our new segment that we like to call the Weekly World News. So the Weekly World News is back. It was a publication that was widely available in a supermarket near you for decades, with ridiculous things like Bat Boy and vampires on the moon and
World's Fattest Cat Saves Christmas. I have it framed.
Yeah, and aliens on the White House lawn. And my favorite was a picture which I had framed of a B-17 found in lunar crater, and I think it was Clavius. So they had a 17 or 170 mile wide B-17 filling the crater anyway. And
I saw one where a Mars rover found a bunch of mummified family of Martians.
And the nice thing was, at least back then, it was really clear that they took pictures and just cut them out with scissors and slapped them together. The angles are wrong. The lighting was wrong. It's all just kind of in good fun. But maybe there's more than a little truth here. So in an explosive interview, it was revealed that U.S. senators are aliens, some of them. So let me explain.
Eight U.S. senators are aliens.
Now you're giving it away. Pilad,
sorry.
who is an alien, stunned the world by revealing that 5 U.S. senators were extraterrestrials in 2019. And Pilad just dropped another bombshell. He spoke to reporters after he met with President Trump in the White House just days ago. And I wonder, it didn't say here, but I wonder if Trump has sympathies for the people that are ruling Venus, because we're working to kind of make our planet similar. Okay. So Pilad named 8 senators who hail from planet Gutan. Pilad is from planet Zeban. Isn't that some kind of a restorative ointment?
I don't know, man.
But he says he can recognize a Gutanian when he sees one. And among them, unsurprisingly to most of us, is Mitch McConnell. Contacted at his office in Washington, D.C., the Weekly World News tells us that Senator McConnell took the high road, making a full and immediate disclosure saying it's all true, we are aliens, and I'm amazed it's taken so long for the public to find out. Or so we hear. That's going to be my stock disclaimer every week. Listeners, if you enjoyed this segment, tell us. If you want us to never speak of it again, tell us, because we do listen. And we're still waiting. Now, we have gotten some feedback on should we do a movie versus science segment. It's exactly 50-50 now. 1 pro, 1 con. So we're waiting for those cards and letters, because we know there's 10, 15, 20,000 of you out there who listen to this show with great anticipation every week, and we need to hear from you. And by the way, we need your space jokes. Okay, that's enough of that. stand by, and we'll be right back in a few minutes with Bob Slater of National Lunar Landing Day. Stand by. And we are back with Bob Slater, Dr. Bob Slater, MD, I should say, who is an orthopedic surgeon in solo practice in Sacramento, California. Hello, Bob. Thanks for joining us.
Hello, guys. Nice to be here. Thanks for hosting me.
So before we get into the topic du jour, what's the idea of being a surgeon? I find absolutely terrifying. It's like flying a plane
I don't know
with
what
a
I'm
pamphlet,
doing.
you know? I mean, how long does it take before you settle into a career like that and think, okay, another day at work?
Yeah, I decided in 6th grade I was going to be an orthopedic surgeon because I was in a ski race and I broke my tibia. And I thought, that's pretty cool. You can put people back together again. That's what I want to do. And then in high school, I blew out my knee ACL rupture, like a lot of people have experience with. So that got me interested. And so I knew from the beginning where I was going. So how do you get into it? You do 4 years of college and 4 years of med school, and then 6 years of residency training and a year of fellowship. And then you're ready to start practicing. And then eventually you keep practicing and you get a little better at it.
Which is why they call it practicing, I guess. So, Tarek, I just want to point out, over Dr. Slater's left shoulder is a prominent book. No, the other left shoulder is a prominent book that sold over 50,000 copies.
Yeah, I have that book. So
bought me a boat and everything. Okay, enough of that promotional stuff.
Love it.
Wait. Do you mean that I should have like a Rod Pyle honorary like display over here? Of
course.
Right? So
right where your bathrobe or negligee or whatever that is in the corner of that.
It's a curtain. And I just haven't replaced it. I have the other one.
Yeah.
I'll put the book there instead. It'll be better.
Yeah, it's only been 2.5 years, partner. Okay, let's get on to it. So Tarek has his patented trademark question that he wants to ask, and then we're going to move on to.
Yeah, it's not every day, Bob, that we get an orthopedic surgeon on the podcast to talk about like this week in space. So I'm very curious about what your path to what I assume is a passion for space exploration, like what that path is like. You know, was it something that you did find when you were young? Is it something that came up later, you know, where you got bit by a space bug as an adult? You know, I'm just curious what your first encounters with that space kind was like.
Well, thanks for the question. Thanks for having me here, guys. I was 6 years old living in Illinois when Neil and Buzz first stepped on the moon. It was a hot July night. We were living outside of Chicago and on the back porch watching, and we being my parents and my two siblings. And they kept telling me at 10 o'clock at night is when the first steps happen in Central Time. And they kept telling me, Bobby, you got to watch this. You got to wake up. This is important. This is history. And I'm so glad that they did, because I actually have an independent recollection of that whole event and watching those first images. So I've been excited about space exploration my whole life. But as we just talked about, my career path was otherwise. I was never smart enough to be an astronaut, and I'm not sure I could grant myself into one of those rockets. So I applaud those that can do it. But I have a deep passion and a lot of enthusiasm for space exploration. And I've been a big fan of your podcast, and space.com is amazing. It's a great source of daily updates on what's happening in the universe and in space. So thank you guys for what you do.
And I'll bet he likes Ad Astra magazine too.
Magazine.
So let's move into the important thing here. Not that your career path isn't important, but this is why you're here. The Lunar Landing Day Initiative. What is it? How did it come about? Tell us the story.
Even though they're my employees, and even though they know I'm so passionate about space, I walked into my office on July 20th, 2023, and I said, hey, team, what happened on this day in history? And there was silence. Nobody knew. Like, no, it's me asking you. Really? July 20th, 1969. Nobody knew. And since then, I've asked lots of people, and nobody really remembers that. Now, some people do remember once I remind them that that was the day that humans landed on the moon for the first time. And they say, oh, now I remember that. I thought that was sad. I thought that was tragic. We all ought to know that. We all ought to celebrate that every year. One of the greatest accomplishments in human history Certainly one of the great unifying moments in American history, the decade that we made that happen. We ought to celebrate that. We need more things that are positive news these days, especially. So that prompted me to start thinking about how we could do that. And I launched the campaign, and we've been going strong every day for 2 years since.
Yeah, and I guess the so you mentioned it's been going on for 2 years, Bob. I mean, I'm just curious, what's your like end goal? Do you want it to be a national holiday? Is that what we should do? Right? Is have a national, like an Apollo 11 holiday? I'm all for extra holidays in July, by the way.
Absolutely right. So this is the drive. Lunar Landing Day will be a new federal holiday. There are 11 currently on the calendar that are recognized as official holidays, meaning a federal holiday. And this will be a new federal holiday. We all ought to celebrate that. And so that is the charge. That is what our now ever-growing national coalition is working hard towards. We made great progress, and we work on this every day.
That's pretty cool. Now, can you tell me, I mean, you talked about what happened at the office, but was it really just that, or was it a larger sense of just understanding, what this meant to U.S. history? Because I was watching too, a little older than you, but it was such a remarkable moment, and I think it was surprised. I think 11 or something, but even then I realized what a big turning point this was, matched only by watching Viking 1. The first images of Viking 1, but Apollo 11 is such a special place in our memories.
Right. So I was a history major in college. So yes, I absolutely appreciate the historical context. This was, of course, the height of the Cold War. This had major implications in that regard. This was a triumph of technology, developing all the technology that we didn't even have when JFK gave his initial address, joint session of Congress in 1961, just 3 weeks after the first suborbital flight of Al Shepard. And to pull this off was really amazing. So yeah, this is very important. This was the first time that humans stepped on another celestial body. This was 410,000 people in all 50 states working to make it happen. This was so important, and we really ought to honor it and cherish it and promote it. So we need to celebrate that, and we also need to promote interest in STEM education for the next generation, which we can talk a little bit more about as one facet of this whole campaign.
Yeah, I do want to talk more about that. Just kind of touching on what you said, though. I learned about you from Jerry Griffin because I'm working on a project with him, but interviewing him and a number of other people, both astronauts and folks who are working in mission control and elsewhere through the space age and during that period, between 1968 and 1972, the one thing I found that I was impressed with and felt, and that most of them kind of agreed with, was the further away I get from those events of the space race, the more astonished I am that it worked. Because when you think about this technology, it was baselined in the mid 60s, which means that most of it was kind of growing out of the 1950s. We were just getting integrated circuits. We were just getting transistors. We were just getting many things that would make this work. And then some of it was not all that up to date. I'm sure you've seen the inertial guide, what was it, the IUS, the computer on the Saturn V and that upper adapter ring.
Right.
Where instead of looking like a briefcase like it does on the command and lunar modules, it looks like you could park a compact car inside of it. So you look at this technology and you think they went all the way to the moon, supported these guys on the way down there, all the way back, managed to rescue Apollo 13. It just boggles my mind by today's standards.
That's really astonishing, isn't it? To think, I mean, we've all heard many people tell us this, but the amount of computing power we have in our wristwatches, is an order of magnitude more than they had in the entire Apollo spacecraft. It's really astonishing. We didn't even have the technology built when we started the campaign to make it happen. So we had to develop the technology, orbital mechanics, and everything else that went into that, design the spacesuits. It is astonishing.
It is, and actually, that's an interesting quote. You said, the watch or the iPhone having more computing power than the Apollo or NASA. I actually was corrected. I was doing a talk with Alan Stern, and I used that quote, and he turned to me and said, "Actually, that phone you just held up has more computing power than the planet Earth did to this day," which I was pretty remarkable. So before I let Tarek jump in, because he's got some things to say, let's go to a quick break. And we'll be right back with Bob Slater. Stand by.
One thing that it really reminds me of too is how harrowing those flights were. The first flight, of course, right? I think Neil Armstrong was on almost out of fuel. When they had to make the landing, and there was the epic story that Buzz Aldrin talks about with the pen to hit to replace the toggle switch so they get off the moon and come back to the Earth, because there was that whole other alternate reality speech that Richard Nixon had put together, in case things didn't go as well as they did, which I think we have a copy of that speech on space.com if anyone wants to read it. But I'm curious, Bob, about your the supporters that you found so far over the last 2 years. If you've gotten a lot of buy-in or support from astronauts or the folks there. What traction have you seen so far? And are you worried about the crazies coming out and saying that we never landed on the moon? And
let's not
trying
go there, Ted. No, we're not doing that. I'll have Buzz talk to them directly, and he can knock them.
There you go. All he has to do is growl.
Yeah, right. So. Thank you for the question. We've made a lot of progress. It'll be 2 years in July that we've been working on this. And in that time, yes, we've got several moonwalkers who are definitely on board and have said, yes, use my name publicly. We have Buzz Aldrin himself who said, yes, I support this endeavor. We should make this a new federal holiday. We have Charlie Duke, who everybody on this podcast knows was at Capcom at the time and later walked on the moon and drove the dune buggy with John Young on 16. Charlie supports this. We have Fred Hayes, infamous Apollo 13 mission. We have the last living moonwalker, Jack Schmitt, subsequent New Mexico U.S. Senator, who said publicly, yes, this ought to be not just a national holiday. Jack says this should be an international holiday. This was something where all of humanity was finally united, just briefly. So we have the NASA flight directors, Gene Kranz and Jerry Griffin, who just mentioned, publicly saying, yes, we're on board. So we also have a really wide coalition, and that's what I'm particularly excited about. We get literally every week more people going online to lunarlandingday.net and signing the petition saying, yes, I support this. Add my name to the list, please. We have people from all walks of life that support this. It's really exciting. And then we can also talk a little bit about the legislative aspect, if you like.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'd like to know more about that and the specific goals besides just celebrating. I know you have some other goals with regard to STEM education and so forth. Now, when you look up your proposal, one also comes across National Moon Day and International Moon Day. What makes this different than those two things?
Yeah, so those are basically resolutions, and it's not a holiday. This is going to be a federal holiday. This will be a paid day off for federal employees. And with a federal holiday, then each individual state can decide whether or not they will honor that or have a day off, and individual companies can do that as well. That's how it works when you have a federal holiday, whether it's Juneteenth Day, the most recent federal holiday, or any of the others, 11 that are currently on the books. So that's how it works. And the United Nations did pass a resolution honoring Moon Day, as they call it, which is great. But it's, in my mind, a little bit like the polite golf clap and, yay, we went to the moon. And this is going to be a whole lot more than that. This will be an actual day like the 4th of July, one of the greatest days in American history. Everybody knows July 4th, 1776. I don't have to ask people what happened on that day. Everybody knows. This is going to be like that.
So Tarek, at the end of the episode, I'll bring this up again, but we really have to encourage our hundreds of thousands of listeners, our dozens of thousands of listeners
Millions, hundreds
to
of
support
millions.
this.
You gotta
And
think big.
space.com has to suggest the same thing because this is a really good idea. Plus, who doesn't love an extra holiday, right?
Right.
Yeah. Well, it won't be a holiday for space.com because it's a space holiday, right? So we'll have to work it. But that's all right. That's all right. I'll take
For
it. I'll
you.
take it.
All right, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I'm curious, like how you see that being a teachable moment. So it would be this fun festival. I can think about like parades and, when we have our 4th of July, there's, the town closes down, there's fireworks, obviously, and food and whatnot. And, but you do want this to be a bit of a learning, experience. And I'm curious if that kind of programming would dovetail with the types of STEM and outreach that that NASA has been doing, or would you see it as more of an opportunity to get people perhaps acquainted with just the realities of space exploration overall, not just the moon landings themselves? So as a springboard to the wider realm of science, technology, etc.
One of our mottos is celebrate the past, promote the future. This is a major facet of our national campaign. We need to promote STEM education more than we already do. The national literacy rates are rather astonishing. We are actually losing track against our world competitors, both allies and competitors. For example, the literacy rate in this country is 75%, and of that, 56% read at the 6th grade lower or lower level. You look at China and Russia, they're at 97 and 98% literacy, respectively. This needs to be a push for STEM education. If we start having fireworks and parades and everything, that's exciting on that day, but it also will be a stimulus for the next generation of kids to say, wow, we did that. We went to the moon. I want to be part of the mission to go to Mars and beyond and develop satellites that go out and study Jupiter's moons more. That's a really important part of what we're doing. The educational outreach component is essential.
I can imagine like a national moonwalk on that day, where it's like a marathon, but then also maybe like there's like
So
kids
like everybody does their Michael Jackson best.
Yeah. Well, that's, on the anniversary on the let's see, in was it 99? In 99, yeah, I was an intern at the LA Times. That was when they put Buzz's boot prints at the Yorba Linda Presidential Library for Nixon, right? Because they made their own moonwalk of fame, and I could see like a national
and because Nixon
moonwalk
wanted to
of fame.
pretend it was his accomplishment.
Oh,
But I could see like
hour. Yeah, I
like
get it.
on the first official federal holiday, the government opens a national moonwalk, walk of fame, right? So it's a moonwalk of fame, not just like a spacewalk of fame, which I think exists in Florida. But it would be all the people that have walked on the moon, and as Bob has mentioned, the people to come, because we are going back to the moon. There will be more moonwalkers, and some of them may not even be professional astronauts, but they'll be professional explorers or scientists or something like that. And that is a legacy to come that we should be prepared to, I suppose, celebrate in one way or another. So it's not just I guess that's what we're doing now in this kind of digital age, where if it's not on TikTok, it's not happening.
So I think one thing that's important to comment on here, at least to me, is I think this is a real opportunity, and you've kind of already hit on this, but it's kind of an opportunity to remind people why this date is important, what happened, why it matters now, because we're in a culture, as you probably have seen, there was a poll recently, it was Ipsos, and there was another one, 2 polls, that were looking at denier rates in our country. And, when you have a generation or two going to people like Steph Curry and Joe Rogan for not just news, but the truth, quote unquote, I think you're in trouble. And, Joe Rogan, if you're watching this, we'd love to have 5% of your success, but stop supporting the moon deniers because it's junk. Can you comment on how this might be used to sort of pull up the pants?
Well, one of the quotes that I love, and I've heard Charlie Duke say it at occasions more than once, is, for those that say we faked it, why would we fake it 9 times? That's ridiculous. And Buzz will just knock you out cold if you tell him.
Nailed Charlie, man.
It's silly. And we ought to stay away from that. But this is all about education. So let's educate those that think it didn't happen and get them excited about it. I think if they really knew what happened, they would get excited about it. Their kids would get excited about it. They'd say, like, I want to be the engineer that makes that happen, develop the next great technological breakthrough. I want to be part of the medical team that makes sure the physiologic aspects of these missions are studied and optimize the health of the astronauts. There are so many ways to spin this. It's really, and that's really the key. 410,000 people in every one of the states made this happen. It wasn't just a few people. It wasn't just 3 white guys walking on the surface, 2 guys and 1 orbiting on the mission. That's not what this is about. This is about everybody, the seamstresses that sewed the suits, the bus drivers that got everybody to work on time. This is a team effort, bar none. And we need to reinvigorate that enthusiasm in this country.
What's that legendary story, real quick, Rod, about that? Was it Kennedy was touring the pad and asked someone that was working by, just like a janitor or whatever, what they were doing there, and he was like helping us go to the moon. You know, it's like that. It's like that thing that everyone plays a role.
The one you're thinking about was it John Young? One of the then future moonwalkers was up on the gantry and saw a worker inside a panel on the S4B, I think it was, and the guy looked at him, at the astronaut who was not wearing his usual regalia, and said, "Who the hell are you, and what are you doing up here?" And the astronaut said, "I'm flying in that thing in a few days." And he said, "I just want you to know nothing on this rocket will fail because of me."
There you go.
Wave the flag.
It's a different story, but both are good. Both are good.
Well, mine's better. Let's go to break,
obviously.
and we'll let you come back and you can try your next one. Hold on.
Well, yeah, I think we're at the point in our talk, Bob, where I want to know what we can do. Like, what can the people listening do to either get involved in this project, celebrate Apollo 11 as like their or just the moon landings themselves? What would you advise? Should they be calling their representatives in the House and Senate to say, "Hey, let's make this happen"? Obviously, signing the petition is maybe up there as well. Like, what's the next steps there?
Right. So several things that can be done. The first is, yes, please lend your support. Go online, lunarlandingday.net, sign the petition. The more supporters we have, the more it convinces everybody how much support there is for this. Secondly, the bill has been drafted and is being circulated in Washington, D.C. on Capitol Hill to make this happen. There's a House version and a Senate version, which are the same, but circulating in both chambers of Congress now. Our coalition has made 2 in-person travels to Washington, D.C., one in last November and one in this March. So we're trying to get the word out. So everybody listening can contact their members of Congress and say, "This is a great idea. Please support it." We've contacted every one of the 100 U.S. senators, every one of the 50 governors and 5 U.S. territory governors. We've tried to make it known at the local level as well, and people can do that as well, whether it's the County Board of Supervisors, the state assembly members, state senators, all of that helps. So the more people we have talking to their representatives, the more momentum we are going to generate for interest and support for this. Very important.
So when you and I spoke while we were booking the podcast, you also mentioned, I think, you were looking for some hands-on help for what you're trying to do. Can you tell us more?
Love to have that. We've recently worked out a deal with a publicist, Teresa McFarland, who is going to help us with making our admittedly rudimentary website now much better. But I wanted to grab that domain name while it was still available last November. So anybody that wants to, please contact me. We'd love to get you involved. We need in particular help with that sort of PR work and website design, that type of thing.
Well, I want to thank you very much and everybody listening for joining us today for episode 162 that we like to call Lunar Landing Day.
Hey!
Exclamation point, because this is very important. Remind us one more. Remind us, Bob, one more time where we can find information and contact you on this initiative.
Please contact me at lunarlandingday.net, and we look forward to any and all support. We're really building a great coalition, and we look forward to success and celebrating this with a Lunar Landing Day barbecue every July 20th going forward.
That's fantastic. I can kind of see the business end of a Saturn V being used to roast weenies somewhere.
Let's light this candle.
Park, where can we find you entertaining the masses these days?
Well, you can find me at space.com, as always, on the Twitter and the Blue Sky at Tariq J. Malik. This weekend is it's Memorial Day weekend, so as we're recording this, so hopefully relaxing and enjoying the holiday and watching that clock tick down to the next Starship launch. That's coming up, and that'll be great to see. I think we'll have more on that next episode.
Fingers crossed on that. And of course, you can always find me at pilebooks.com or at astromagazine.com, where I like to hang out. And in June, you can find Tariq and myself and Bob. It'd be great if you showed up at the National Space Society's International Space Development Conference in warm, embracing Orlando, Florida, which will be like stepping into a wet mattress, but that's okay. You'll be in a very nice resort hotel with fantastic air conditioning. So if you're interested in joining us there, where I'm going to be handing Tariq his very nice, very expensive award, go to isdc.nss.org. And remember, you can always drop us a line at twit@twit.tv. We welcome your comments, suggestions, and ideas, and answer each and every email. New episodes of this podcast published every Friday on your favorite podcatcher, so make sure to subscribe, tell your friends, and give us reviews. We live or die by your reviews. We also live or die by you joining Club Twit, and we're counting on you to sign up this year. And if you do it soon, you can get grandfathered into the current rate, which is going to go up in a couple of months. And they are once again offering annual plans. So there's all kinds of good reasons for you to jump into Club Twit. But the main good reason is me and Tariq.
That's right. Well, mostly me.
Mostly
me.
You.
That's
of
okay.
course. That's what your mom would say. So thanks, everyone. We'll see you next time. Take care.
Stay on top of tech trends without the time sink. Twit.tv's short-form podcasts are built for busy leaders like you, delivering essential insights in minutes. Hands on Mac and Hands on Windows provide quick tips for Mac and PC, while Hands on Tech quickly addresses common tech challenges to keep your operations running smoothly. If your conference room needs an upgrade, Home Theater Geeks explores the best screen and sound systems. And if you like watching the shows, join Club Twit to get full video access, ad-free versions, and more. Get tech knowledge that matters on your schedule. Download our short format shows now at twit.tv or your favorite podcast player.